Are we missing a large source of cyanotoxins when we monitor our freshwater ponds? Let's rethink benthic cyanobacteria. Here's a helpful definition of benthic cyanobacteria from the Interstate Technology Regulatory Council. They say, we will use benthic cyanobacteria to mean non-planktonic cyanobacteria, or cyanobacteria that does not float or drift in the water column. Benthic cyanobacteria grows attached to or associated with surfaces in a water body, often forming macroscopic or visible mats. We recognize that some attached cyanobacterial mats do not grow strictly in the benthic zone. So the goal of this presentation is to find some useful strategies. The presentation topics include exploring methods for surveying benthic blooms, looking at some citizen scientist data, and looking at some reasonable solutions to avoid toxin exposure from benthic cyanobacteria. We'll start by looking at two pilot method studies conducted in 2024 and 2025. The pilot study site met the following criteria. Pond data was available from multiple years. There was a history of benthic cyanobacteria, and the area was used by pets and people. Smalls Pond met this criteria. It was sampled since 2001, had history of benthic blooms, and was used by the public, including dogs. Smalls Pond covers 21 acres, making it a great pond. The pond is located north of Long Pond and on the eastern side. It is just off Cahoon Road. There is a connection maintained by Harwich between Long Pond and Smalls. Smalls Pond is a shallow pond with a maximum depth of 11 to 12 feet and 8 feet in low water. If the connection to Long Pond is open, alewife enter Smalls, breed, and lay their eggs. The bottom and benthic area is covered with a thick layer of leaf litter and detritus. On the southeast side of Smalls is Cahoon Beach. The town of Harwich enriches the beach with imported sand. The rest of Smalls shoreline is covered with a rich collection of plant life, and there are many signs of a healthy and diverse ecosystem, including macroinvertebrates. With a rich source of nutrients and shallow waters that allow light to reach the bottom, benthic cyanobacteria colonies have been observed. During the method pilot study in 2024 at Smalls Pond at Cahoon Beach, weekly data was collected using the Brewster Ponds Coalition protocol. The method included a field data sheet, photographs of the site, a measure of the water temperature, and water clarity was measured with a turbidity tube. Whole lake water was sampled with an integrated tube, and a plankton townet was used to sample buoyant plankton. The fluorometer data was collected with a fluorometer that could measure phycocyanin and phycoerythrin. Identification of the genera of cyanobacteria from the townet sample was performed using a microscope and digital camera. At the end of the season, the complete data set was reviewed to see what information was the most helpful to detect benthic cyanobacteria. The results were clear. The direct observation of undisturbed shallow water, including the leaf litter and macrophytes, was the most effective way to find benthic colonies. A white scoop on a pole and gloves were helpful for collecting samples, and photographs documented details of areas with colonies. Over the course of the season, some colonies floated around the pond or were washed ashore. Some collected in the shallow gullies created by wave action. As expected, the plankton samples collected with the townet were not helpful in finding floating or stray benthic cells. Diluted drops of dense colonies had high fluorometry levels, highlighted here in yellow. The samples required careful separation of solids and calculated dilutions. Even these drop samples of the colony showed high concentrations of biomass and, in turn, high levels of potential toxins. The microscope images showed a mixture of types of cyanobacteria in the colonies, but the majority of cells and the binding gelatinous material was made up of a phanocapsa. The Cynoscope program on iNaturalist was very helpful in confirming identification of different genera in the benthic blooms. The Cynoscope project connects citizen scientists and experts in the field of cyanobacteria and documents locations cyanobacteria has been observed from all over the world. So, what were the takeaways from 2024? Small, shallow, clear water areas are an ideal habitat for benthic cyanobacteria. Visual inspection is critical. The cyanocasting method was designed to collect plankton genera with a tow net. However, the method does not capture what is happening at the bottom of the pond. To discover benthic blooms, visual inspection of the bottom and checking the macrophytes is helpful in the shallow areas. And we found the mats are made up of different types of cyanobacteria, as other researchers have discovered. The types of cyanobacteria we observed can produce toxins, and with their highly concentrated numbers in the mats that can wash ashore, they can be quite problematic. In 2025, the monitoring for benthic cyanobacteria was conducted biweekly, focusing on the shoreline observations, photographs, whole lake water, and colony sampling. Colonies were observed starting in mid-July and throughout the swimming season through September. During August, the culvert or the connection between Long Pond and Smalls Pond had closed in. On August 13th, there were multiple benthic colonies in the shallow waters at Cahoon Beach on the small side. Also, a small collection of plankton scum made up of Dolichospermum at the end of the connection culvert on the Long Pond side. On August 14th, the culvert had been dredged and water was flowing between the two ponds. There was no more evidence of Dolichospermum scum. However, there were still multiple benthic colonies on the small side on the leaf litter in the shallow waters. In 2025, the composition of the colonies was the same as what we saw in 2024, with the main ingredient being Aphanocapsa. Aphanocapsa is known to make several toxins, including microcystin. Without any regulations or authority to post or protect the public at these beaches, we decided to look at the larger picture and current research in benthic cyanobacteria. In a German study of 34 lakes in 2023, 35% of the lakes had benthic cyanobacteria. That was 12 out of 34 lakes. The German study says the following: our findings suggest that monitoring of benthic cyanobacteria and their toxins should receive greater attention, ideally complementing existing sampling programs with little additional effort. They also conclude, when collecting water samples for the analysis of cyanotoxins, standard sampling practices, i.e., the grab samples, provide only a snapshot in space and time and may miss areas or times of the highest occurrence and therefore the greatest risk. The ITRC add, sampling cyanotoxin concentrations of the water column around the benthic cyanobacterial mats will not represent the human health or animal consequences of exposure to the mat material. So, what are some strategies to deal with the risks from benthic blooms? ITRC has an excellent website called HCB-2 for harmful cyanobacteria blooms. They acknowledge that monitoring of large stretches of pond littoral zones is often impossible, especially given the patchy distribution and changing growth rates of mats. To overcome this, several countries have now adopted a pro-educational strategy. Agencies that monitor ponds post informational signs to educate the public on the appearance and risks that cyanobacteria pose, and this allows the public to make informed decisions on whether the water body is safe to use. Some of our current and local signage is difficult to understand. Clear messaging is important to protect public health and reduce unnecessary exposure to fecal bacteria and cyanotoxins. Current county signage can be confusing and do not explain the difference between fecal bacteria and cyanobacteria. Fecal bacteria are regulated and measured at permitted beaches and can be at a healthy level during a cyanobacterial bloom. Cyanobacterial postings are based on state guidance and local health officials' discretion. Benthic blooms are not regulated or specifically addressed in the state guidance. Current Cape Cod sampling techniques can miss areas of greatest risk from benthic blooms. There are other strategies to educate and help the public, including mobile apps that are available for citizens to report the location of cyanobacterial proliferations. or these apps can be used by citizen scientists who could greatly assist in documenting or highlighting problematic areas. There are social media platforms and other forms of communication, including pamphlets or text alerts, and my favorite, pond associations or coalitions that can share current data and educational materials that can connect even to visitors with a QR code on beach signs. And I would like to end with 5 ways that you can keep your favorite pond healthy.
Little drops of water in little grains of sand build a mighty ocean and the wondrous land. Little acts of kindness and little words of love will build for us this world of peace that we've been dreaming of. Every time you say hello, every time you lend a hand, it will help your heart to grow. Sometimes it's the simple things that can. Every time you make a friend, just by being honest and true, is the time you build the friend up deep inside of you. We can all just live each day, letting love lead the way, by treating one another as we would wanna be. We'll open up our hearts and our eyes so we can see that little drops of water and little grains of sand build the mighty ocean and the wondrous land. Little acts of kindness and little words of love will build for us this world of peace that we've been dreaming of.